So I got this Dodge Challenger here in the garage, just got dropped off. So it's here for a few different reasons. Number one, she said at about 60, 70 miles per hour that it just kind of feels squirrely all over the road. So I got to check that. There's a parasitic draw. Every day the car needs a jump start. If you turn the car off, it won't start again without another jump start. So there's that. And then there's the windshield wipers don't work at all. Nothing at all. So if it's raining, you can't even drive this car. And then the driver's seat, she says it moves. It's got a power seat. It moves, but it doesn't go all the way back. First of all, I see it's got one of those big old aftermarket touchscreen radios. So when the car first got dropped off, I turned the car off inside the garage. Obviously, the first thing I went for is that radio. I hit the power button and it didn't turn on. I'm like, okay, so good. It must be wired up correctly. So what happened is I came back here, I checked the battery, and the battery was at about 11.5 volts. Even though she just drove over here, over an hour and a half drive, that battery should have been charged by the alternator. I did check it. The alternator is putting out its 14 volts. So we have a completely dead battery. It's not accepting a charge, and the battery is just done for. That's why it needs a jump just to get this car running. So what I did is I put the battery on a trickle charger, even though I know it's no good. I grabbed my spare battery, which is much smaller, but it has a full charge on it. You can see it's a smaller battery, but I popped it in. The car started right up. And what's something I noticed? Now that it has a battery that actually has power, guess what, guys? The key is out of the ignition. And what do we have? We have this touchscreen radio that is still on. Doors are open. You know, I figure some cars, they keep power to the radio, even though the key's out, until you open the driver door. So I tried that. Door is now open, and we still have power to this radio. Major issue right there. That could definitely kill the battery. And the battery he has in this car, or he had, that I just took out, is a brand new battery. I keep saying he or she because it's two people that are driving this car, okay? He and she. So he said he's replaced the battery like 2 or 3 times, if I remember correctly. So yeah, they're just going right through batteries. Anyways, the windshield wipers don't work. So I come over here and I start messing with the switch, right? You saw this piece move right here? That's not normal, right? Look at it moving. So I'm like, what's going on here? This is what's going on here. What is this, a Bluetooth connection? What's going on? Here's your problem, lady. So yeah, I mean, there could definitely be something else wrong on why the wipers don't work. But this is step number 1. You got to put your socks on before you put your shoes on, guys, okay? So if you see a problem like this, a obvious problem, yeah, this needs to get fixed before you could continue with this diagnosis. So as of right now, for the windshield wipers not working, it needs a new windshield wiper stock right here. That needs to get replaced. And one more problem that I forgot to mention is she said that the trunk doesn't latch. It won't close. The trunk is always open on this car. And you could see how that could contribute to a parasitic draw, because if there's a light inside of here, which most trunks do have a light somewhere, you know, if the trunk doesn't latch, you would imagine it would keep that light turned on, right? I don't see a light at the moment. Yeah, I'm not really seeing a light inside of here, but it doesn't mean it won't keep something active if this thing doesn't latch down. So here's a latch, and look at this. Yeah, it's not supposed to do that. As you can see, I got my vice grips right here because the struts for the trunk just don't do anything. And I'm gonna go ahead and try to latch this thing and show you what it looks like. I don't know if this car was in some sort of a rear end collision or something. It doesn't look like it, but that doesn't mean anything. You know, this bumper could have been replaced, but the trunk definitely seems like it's not sitting right, and that may be contributing to all of this. Here's what I'm talking about. You can see the trunk is all the way down. Of course, it's not latched. On this side, the trunk is pretty much touching the body panels. You can see it right here. There's almost no gap. Everything is just touching, right? But right here it sits like more or less flush. And if we come on the right side, we have a massive gap. It's not flush. It's like sticking up very high right here. So obviously the whole trunk is shifted to the left. Like I said, it just kind of reinforces my thoughts of this thing being in some sort of a collision. I don't know. But one thing I can tell you is, why does this trunk gotta be so freaking heavy, guys? I mean, I'm not even exaggerating. I know I got Mickey Mouse arms, But this thing is like stupid heavy. And I know these like Challengers and Chargers, they're just big old boats, right? It's like, oh, they got X amount of horsepower. Well, they need all that horsepower to move this freaking boat. My question is, why does a trunk lid have to be this heavy where it's almost impossible to lift if those trunk struts go out? Because this has got to be the heaviest trunk I've ever tried lifting in my life. It's crazy. This thing is absolutely crazy how heavy it is. Let's see if we can mess with this latch right here and maybe get this thing to lock. See, this is what I'm talking about. The car is aware that the trunk is open, trunk ajar. So, like I said, I don't see a light back there, but the car knows that it's open and that could keep one of the modules alive. All right, so I went ahead and latched it right here because this is where the sensor is attached to. And once you latch it inside the cabin on the dash, it says that the trunk has been closed. So I went ahead and bolted down the actual striker right here so it's nice and solid. And now when you close it, it actually latches. And the trunk ajar light turns off. You can see it's not on anymore. I'm gonna go ahead and open the trunk. And now the trunk should open. There it goes. So that's all fixed. Honestly, I don't think this was a real problem. I think this is a problem that the owner caused himself, because you can imagine if there's something constantly killing the battery and your battery's in your trunk and every time you need to get to it, well, it turns into a real big problem when the only way to open the trunk is with power from right here, but you have no power, your battery's dead, right? Or come inside of here and push the button to electronically open the trunk, but again, there's no power. So I think the only way to do it is to climb in through the back seats, which he said he's done so many times, and I can imagine that's a real pain in the butt, because you can see the back of this car does not have a traditional keyhole to just put your key in it. You know, technology, right? 2022, and this is where we're at. Stupid crap like this. So I think this whole trunk not latching thing was caused by the owner so he could get into it every single time. It would kill the battery without having to jump inside of there. So that's why it was really simple to fix this issue. All right, something weird is going on. So I removed the fuse for the radio and it stopped pulling juice from the battery, obviously. I put the fuse back in and now the radio seems to be working like it should. So let me show you guys. Put it in accessory. Radio should turn on. There we have it. I'm gonna go ahead, take the key out. That's another thing. This thing, it almost, it's weird because it resets. You saw the radio was that loud. I didn't leave it that loud. I didn't do anything. It's almost like every time you take the key in and out, it kind of resets the whole radio, which isn't right. But let me show you guys, okay? So the screen is on, the key's out. I'm gonna go ahead and open up the driver door now. Door's open. Radio turned off, just like it should. But it wasn't doing that before, and I even showed you guys, I caught it in the act. It wasn't doing that, you see? And now if I go ahead, put the key back in it, turns right back on immediately. Okay, it's not like a startup sequence or anything, it's just on. And since the door is open right now, if I remove the key, it shuts off immediately. Keys out, look how fast it turned off. So right now it seems to be working. You know, I'm here thinking about this radio. First of all, it's a no-name brand like cheapo eBay or Amazon radio, because we all know if you buy a name brand like say a Pioneer, Kenwood, whatever, they have no problem putting their name somewhere. Their name is always in big, you know, big bold letters right in front. They want you to know it's a Pioneer or a Kenwood or whatever. But there's no name on this thing, so that's what leads me to believe it's got to be like an Amazon special. And if you look at the back side, that's the type of kit this thing is. The fact that sometimes the radio works as intended, that when you take out the key, the radio stays on until you open the door and then the radio shuts off. That's how it should work. But then there's times we've caught it before where you open a door and the key's out and the radio freaking stays on. So I don't think it's a wiring problem, because if it was wired up incorrectly, it would either not work how it's supposed to or work how it's supposed to. There is no in between. There's no sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. So that leads me to believe that it has to be like a faulty cheap radio that's doing this. Sometimes it's going to sleep, sometimes it's not going to sleep. You get what I'm saying? All right, so the car's been sitting for about a half hour, and I got the latches latched, so the car thinks that all the doors are closed. I got the trunk latched, the driver's side door, and even the hood. I don't think the hood has a sensor on it, but I still have it latched. Like I said, it's been about over a half hour. So the car is asleep and it thinks everything is locked. Okay, I got my meter right here connected to the battery, and I have it connected in series. You can see it right there. So this thing is draining over 1 amp out of this battery. That's a lot. It will drain and kill a battery by tomorrow. I got my suspicions. I really do think it's the radio that's at fault here. So we're at 1.16 amps, right? Let's go ahead and pull just the fuse for the radio. And I'm gonna have to put you guys down because the fuse panel right here is very loose and it won't let me do it with one hand. Here goes the fuse right there for the radio. I just pulled it out. See, our meter dropped, not all the way, not as much as I was expecting, but it did drop. So I guess I'm gonna go ahead and let this I don't know, sit for a little while, 10-15 minutes, see what happens, and then we'll go from there. But I mean, we did have a drop by pulling out that fuse for the radio. So oh, you guys see that? See how much it was? Like a massive drop. It took, I don't know, like what, maybe like 15-20 seconds. This is looking really good. It's looking promising. I really do think it's the radio in this car, this aftermarket junk that's you know, I got nothing against aftermarket radios, but if you had a decent quality, like a name brand one, like a Pioneer, a Kenwood, and you know, off the top of my head, I'm, you know, Alpine, whatever, right? That's one thing. But when you get these cheap Chinese brands that have like no names on them, or the names are very sus, you gotta start to question it, right? So as soon as I took the battery out of the Challenger, I went ahead and put it on my trickle charger. You can see it's right here. This thing charges at 1.5 amps, and this light flashes green while it's charging, and then it turns a solid green once it's done charging, or it won't charge anymore. So I noticed that this thing was charging the battery for about an hour, maybe hour and a half, until it turned solid green, indicating that it's no longer charging the battery. So I put my battery tester on it, and we got 12.25, which isn't great to begin with. But if we go through the steps of testing this battery, I put in the code cranking amps of 800 because that's what it says right there on the sticker. And then we go ahead and test it. We get 328 code cranking amps, and we get the light for weak, and we also get the light for bad battery, which isn't great. So yeah, it just confirms all of my suspicions with this thing, that the battery is no good, it's toast. Even though the sticker right here says 621 and we're in 22 right now, it doesn't matter. This battery is toast. It's been drained so many times that it's done for. Now, she did say she got it from AutoZone, and hopefully she could get some sort of warranty on this and they'll exchange it for her. I don't know if they will, but hopefully, and it'll save her the price of a new battery. But this one is definitely toast. All right, so I'm just about done messing with this. It's like 6:30 p.m. and I just got off the phone with the owner. I was explaining to her what I'm finding, what's going on, and she was telling me that under the normal circumstances that she have to deal with this car, she said guaranteed my battery sitting in here overnight will be drained and killed by tomorrow morning. So let's go ahead and put that to the test. I'm going to reconnect the negative battery cable back to the battery. We're going to leave the fuse for the radio out. We're not putting that fuse back in because we're testing it, okay? And then I'm going to go ahead and lock and close all the doors on it, the hood, the trunk, the door. Lock everything up normally as if the car were just parked on the street. And tomorrow morning, we'll find out if indeed this thing is going to kill my battery or if the car is going to start right back up again. You know what? Just in case, let's go ahead and play it safe here. Because if the battery is dead, I don't want to have to deal with climbing in through the back seats just to open up the trunk and deal with all that crap. So we're going to go ahead and leave the trunk open and just leave this thing latched just how it is, so the car thinks that the trunk is locked. But let's go ahead, got the battery reconnected, everything's tightened down. Let's go ahead and make sure it starts up right now to show you guys that the battery is indeed strong enough to start up this car with no issues. As you can see, started right up, no issues at all. All right, that's it. So the door is now locked. The hood is locked and the trunk is still latched, so the car thinks that it's locked. That's it. Let this thing sit overnight and we'll find out tomorrow. Since I had plenty of time on my hands, I decided to go outside and cut the grass. It's hard to see, but my daughter's on the lawnmower with me. And you can see I'm trying to make like parallel lines, as far as cutting the grass so it looks decent. And you could tell exactly at what point I let my daughter take control of the steering wheel. So it's the next day. It's about 11:30 in the morning right now. So the car's been sitting for about, I don't know, like 17 hours. First things first, let's see if the key unlocks the car, indicating that it still has power. There it goes. That took a few clicks. I don't know if like the battery in the, you know what, now that I remember, even locking the car, I had to hit this button like a good 6 or 7 times. The battery in this thing might be weak, but it did unlock. See the headlights turned on. Let's see if it'll start up. Start it up. All right, turn it off. So what I'm going to do now is, I got other things to look at, like the power seat, why it doesn't go all the way back, and even check the suspension. But that's all separate stuff. And as far as the whole battery, I'm just going to leave it connected. We are not going to mess with this. I don't know how long the car is going to be here with me, but I want that battery to stay connected as long as possible. Let's see if we can get a few days out of this battery without it being killed, okay? Because this is already a massive improvement. According to the owner, she said no battery would make it overnight in this car. And as you can see, it started right up. And not to mention, this car takes a big old stupid battery. And my battery that I installed in here is like 3/4 the size of the type of battery that actually belongs in here. So it's a much smaller battery, and look, next day it still started up. So as far as the battery for the key fob, as you can see, I took the key fob apart. I got the battery right here, and we're gonna go ahead and test it. This is a 3-volt battery. So what you should see on these things when you test them is over 3 volts. Okay, I'm touching both sides, and look at the multimeter. 2.8 volts. This battery is shot, guys. That's why you have to push the button like 7 or 8 times just to get it to send that signal to the car to unlock and lock the doors. I got a hold of a new battery, pulled it right out the package. Never mind that it says IKEA on it. That does not matter. Let's go ahead and test it. And there we have it, 3.2 volts. That's what I expect to see on a good battery. Anything below 3 volts is a bad battery. You want to just go ahead and throw it out. So let me go ahead and put the new battery in the key fob and confirm that everything works. I got the key fob fully assembled, and it works every single press. There it goes. Good battery. Works just like it should. You don't have to push the button 8 times. And this is when people think that their key fob is going bad, when it's just a battery. And what do they start doing? They start pressing the button harder and harder every time just to get to work, because they think it's actual key fob going bad. And they end up damaging it over something as silly as just a battery. So I just looked in the back seat, and what do you know? There goes the old radio she was talking about. That one's a JVC. She said she was still having the same issues with that radio in the car. But then again, we also have a battery that's spanked. At some point, it doesn't matter which radio you put in here. If the battery is spanked, it's spanked, and it needs to get replaced. So that's that. Of course, classic jumper cables in the back is as often as this thing needed a jump. So let's go ahead and look at the issue with the chair real fast. So see, we do have power, but something doesn't sound right. And another thing I'm noticing is it seems like only the left rail of the seat is actually trying to go forward or rearward, whereas the right rail doesn't seem to be moving at all. Let's see if you guys can see this. It's kind of like it's just binding. Let's have a look underneath the seat. This thing has two motors. You can see one right there and one right in front of us. Now the noise that we're hearing, I hear it coming from the left rail, which is the one that's moving. And this big motor right in front of us, I don't hear it doing anything. So we're gonna have to see if we have power going to it. Okay, so I couldn't get that wire disconnected from that motor right there, but it's kind of irrelevant at this point because I found out that that motor is working. It's just for a different function. It's for like the go up or go down function. It's not for the, you know, go back and forth. Basically, that motor is working just fine. It does what it has to do. But what I did find out is this motor right here, right in front, which I completely missed, is broken, and so is this rail. You can see the rail should be attached to that piece of metal right there via a rivet, right? And then if you get that out the way, you see the motor right here. See how it's got this line coming out of it? I'm assuming it's some sort of like a steel braided line. There's supposed to be one coming out of this end and going into this thing right here. And you can see it's completely missing and broken. So this motor right here, once it spins, it's what's responsible for bringing the seat forward and rearward, and that's what's going on here. So it's not a bad motor. That thing is broken. I don't know how it breaks, but I guess Dodge, right? So okay, so I got a pretty good shot of this using the light and the mirror, and I'm looking inside that motor on the end that's missing the shaft coming out of it. So let's see if I can get you guys a shot of this. I'm gonna go ahead and move that motor. You see it spinning inside of there? Okay, so yeah, that's pretty much it. This thing needs some sort of new seat rail assembly, because I can't imagine you could buy that stuff separate. You know, my best bet would be to go to a junkyard and just pull it off of another car. So it's diagnosed that there isn't much I could do without a part. You get what I'm saying? If I had a part, sure, pull the seat out, change the rail, do what you got to do. But we don't have any parts, so it's a done deal. All right, now that we looked into the power seat, it's time to check why the windshield wipers don't work. Now, I did have to start up the car because if we don't do that and we don't start charging this battery, we're gonna end up killing the battery, and that's not good for our testing to see if this car is gonna end up killing the battery in like 2 or 3 days. Because what we're doing is using, you know, the power seat, messing with it, and then the wipers, all we're doing is pulling juice out that battery. And then if the battery were to be dead by tomorrow, was it the car that drained it, or was it us that drained it by not having the car running and testing all these electrical components? You get what I'm trying to say? So anyways, it's running. It's not going to be for long, just enough for us to start testing things. And to any customers, if you're taking your car to someone for them to test it, please make sure it has fuel in it, because a lot of times the car needs to be running in order to do certain tests, or whatever the reason is. Even if they need to take it out for a test drive to try to replicate the problem that you're experiencing, the car needs to have fuel. Please stop doing this. I hate when I get cars with no fuel in them. So anyway, got my scanner connected right now, and I'm gonna try to get into the windshield wiper system and see if we could control it from the scanner, because we know this right here is already broken, so that doesn't work. But let's see if there's any function inside the scanner for this. Okay, so the only functions I see in my scanner as far as the windshield wipers is going to be right here, where it says wiper on off state and wiper high low state. So if we go to the on off, at the bottom right here, we could go ahead and toggle the wipers on. Let's see what happens. You can see it's commanded on right now, and we have absolutely no wipers. Okay, let's turn this back off. Let's try the other one. I'm not expecting it to work, but let's just give it a try. So let's go to the high-low. Turn on. It says on right there, and still no wipers. There has to be a relay for this thing. I would expect this relay to be underneath the hood, so let's go check that. All right, so here's a fuse box. There's a relay sitting right here, and the only empty spot is this thing right here. Let's see what this is. What would this be? Okay, so it looks like it's laid out like this. So it would be relay number 16. It's nice that they give us a diagram. 16, front wipers on or off. Oh my god. Let's go ahead and put this in to see what happens. This is funny. Ah, there goes the wipers. Okay, so they do work. There's nothing wrong with the motor. Now that we get the scanner out, let's go ahead and command the wipers off. Let's see if it could do that. And it did. It turned them off. Let's turn them back on. There it goes. Okay, so the wiper motor works. The wipers work. The command from the ECU and all that stuff is working because we're able to control it through the scanner. So that tells me the only thing that's wrong with this car on why the windshield wipers don't work is the wiper stock. It's simply just broken. So once we replace that, I'm pretty confident it's going to fix this problem. And now I see why someone pulled this relay out of here, because let me make sure to pull the relay out while the wipers are down so they're not stuck in the middle of the windshield. Pretty good. Okay, so this explains why someone pulled out the relay and just left it right here, because when that switch broke, it seems to have broken in the on position or the high position. That's why the wipers are moving so fast. So yeah, I mean it makes sense, because if your wiper stock breaks, what are you gonna do, right, to stop this? And you can't just keep it running all freaking days. So you either pull a fuse or you pull the relay for it. Makes perfect sense. So that's a diagnosis for the windshield wipers. It needs a new wiper stock. I think the last problem we have to look into is what to me sounds like the front suspension. She says 60, 70 miles per hour. It kind of feels wobbly, like it's all over the road. So we might find like loose ball joints, loose tie rods, who knows. But let's jack up the front end and check it out. Now we could go ahead and turn the car off because we don't need the engine running for any of this. All right, so I lifted front left side, front right side, looking for the normal worn out bushings, ball joints, tie rods, things of that nature, anything that's a red flag. And for the most part, everything seemed real solid, minus the front right side right here. And guys, this is me really nitpicking, really stretching for something. I felt a little bit of play, which seems to be like the outer tie rod. And it's so minor, guys, that I can't see this being what the owner is talking about. She said it feels sketchy, all over the road at 70 miles per hour. And is it a problem? Yes. Any type of looseness in a joint like that, like a tie rod, is a problem. Is it the problem? I don't think so, because it's so minor, guys. Like I said, I'm really stretching for this to say that that tie rod is bad. So I'm not seeing any like crazy red flags up front. I started checking the tires and they all look like they got decent tread on them. So that doesn't really look too concerning to me. That's when I started checking tire pressure. This wheel right here, 45 psi, 40 psi, 40 psi, 15 psi. Well, that's a problem, guys. I can tell you right now, I would not want to be in a car that has 15 psi in one of the tires and I'm on the expressway at 70 miles per hour. That right there could definitely cause a car to feel unstable and kind of like wobbly. I don't want to say wobbly, but kind of feel like it's all over the road. It doesn't feel stable. This seems more concerning to me at 15 psi than that tiny little bit of play that I felt in that front right outer tie rod. So what I'm going to do is properly inflate all of the tires, make sure everything's good. All right, so it's the next day, almost 12 in the afternoon. Let's see if this turret will start up. I don't remember if I locked it last time. I think I just closed it. Let's see. We got some information on the dash. That's a good sign. Starts right up. Turning it off now. Alright guys, so that's officially 2 days of this thing just sitting. And it starts up. So it is now day 3. It's about 2 p.m. Let's go ahead and see if this bad boy will start. Starts right up. It's day 4, and I know my camera looks weird. I just found out my phone has like a wide angle. I did not know this. I've had this phone for like 2 years. Anyway, it's day 4, and I promise this is gonna be the last day we test this for the parasitic drain, and it's already unlocked. Okay. We still have our headlights, which is great. I'm expecting it to start right up. There you have it. All right, so I'm out test driving the Challenger, and it drives a lot better than I was expecting. If I were to let go of the steering wheel at like 40-50 miles per hour, which, you know, I'm not saying to do it's not a good idea. I'm just saying the car goes relatively straight down the road. The brakes feel great. I'm not hearing any weird noises or anything like that. The only thing that's extremely annoying is that license plate right there in the windshield rattling against the glass. I don't understand why it's there. Guys, just put your plate where it belongs. Put it on the bumper. Anyways, besides that, the car drives better than I was expecting. Okay, not nowhere near as bad as I was expecting. But it's not perfect. I am noticing some things. It almost feels like, especially when you're turning, okay, going straight, like I said, is decent. It's when you start turning that it feels one of two things, okay? Either the wheel alignment is out, or we're driving on extremely low tire pressure, which we know that's a fact. And guys, I'm gonna be honest with you, earlier in the video, when I said that I put air in the tires, I lied, okay? The only reason I said that is because I knew I was gonna end up putting air in the tires, and you know, that's that. But the more I thought about it, I was like, you know what, I really wanna see what the owner is talking about, and I need to recreate the problem that she's having. So I just thought it'd be a good idea to hold off on refilling the tire pressure so I could experience the problem, and that's what we're doing now. Okay, I'm definitely feeling those symptoms of what feels like low tire pressure, and I just experienced it back there just a few minutes ago, doing like 40 miles per hour. You don't even got to be going that fast, as long as you do something that disrupts the suspension, the rear end. And this is why the owner thinks that there's a problem with the rear suspension, because the front end, like say you're going over a bump or a sewer cover or something, when the front end passes over that bump, the car is fine. But as soon as the rear wheels hit that bump, it completely disrupts the entire car, and it makes the rear end feel kind of like squirrely on the road. It just doesn't feel very stable, and that's what led the owner to think that something's wrong with the rear end. But I really think that it's that low tire pressure. It's practically riding on a flat tire back there. So yeah, when you hit something that disrupts the suspension, or you hit a little bump and you're doing 30, 40, 50, and God forbid 70 miles per hour on the expressway, yeah, I could see this thing feeling very unstable at those speeds whenever you hit a bump. So let's go back to the garage right now, and we'll fill up the tire pressure for real this time and see if it makes a difference. Okay, so after we put air in the tires, we're gonna take it for a very short test drive, because the last thing I want is to get stranded in this car with no gasoline. All right, so after adjusting the PSI on all of the tires, of course, that one tire in the rear was very underinflated at around like 15 PSI, maybe a little bit lower. And some of the other tires were actually overinflated, so I had to take some air out of them. But after dealing with the tires and taking it out for another test drive, taking the same exact route, making sure to hit the same exact bumps and all kinds of stuff like that, it was a completely different car, guys. Whenever I hit those bumps before, like I said, it was all over the place and it just didn't feel very stable. And now this test drive, going over the same exact bumps, it was a completely different car. There was none of that going on, and taking a bumps seemed fairly normal this time. So you can imagine driving with a tire that's practically a flat. Whenever you're going over a bump, especially at any type of speed, you can imagine how the car is going to feel. It upsets the whole balance of the car. So yeah, it was nothing major, just simply low tire pressure in the rear end of the car. Oh, and I did move that license plate. You can see I just took it out the windshield and I put it right here on the passenger seat because it was very annoying. But even turning, the car feels a lot more stable. Remember how I was saying it felt kind of like the alignment was off, and all of that's gone now. It turns normal. It feels absolutely normal while turning now. So that's good. Let's go back to the shop, because I did notice that the right turn signal is flashing fast, so we gotta have a light bulb that's out somewhere. Let's see if we can spot that. Let's go back to the garage. So on the right side here, you can see we have a blinking tail light for the turn indicator. And up front, we also have a blinking light. You can see it reflecting off of the wall right there. So I'm like, okay, the front's blinking, the rear is blinking. So what's going on? Why is this thing flashing fast as if a bulb is out? But let's go ahead and test the left turn signal. Go to the front. We got our just regular bulb flashing up front. But in the rear, we're going to see something different. Two of them flashing for a turn signal. Over here, I believe we only got this one flashing. So even though there is a blinker still on the right side as far as the rear and the front, the fact that this bulb is out is what's causing it to blink fast. So let me go ahead and get that bulb out of there, and I'll see if I have a replacement here. Alright, so luckily I found a replacement bulb right here in my collection. You can see both of them are now blinking. And if we come inside the car, you can see the indicator is no longer blinking fast. That is a normal blink. You can see it up there in the front as well. So that's fixed. Pretty easy fix. So I think that's going to be it for this car. There isn't much else I could do without parts. We can't fix the seat without having the new seat rails. Can't fix the wipers without having their wiper stock or the turn indicator stock, whatever you want to call it. It's the same part. As far as the radio, it's just going to stay with the fuse removed. I didn't install it, and frankly, I'm not sure if it's a installation error because sometimes it does turn off when the door opens. But the times that it doesn't turn off, that's when it's killing the battery. If something was wired up incorrectly, it would always not work how it's supposed to. If something was wired up correctly, it would always work how it's supposed to. This is intermittent, whether it works or it doesn't. You know, it decides when it wants to work correctly. So that tells me there's something wrong with the cheap ching chong bing bong part there, and it needs to get replaced. That's my opinion. I could be wrong. It could be wired up incorrectly. That's a possibility, but I don't want to mess with that. I didn't do it. Okay. So yeah, as you guys saw, it's been starting all these days. It definitely needs these struts back here because this is one heavy trunk. To not have these things working is extremely annoying. So that's it, guys. I've looked at everything that it came here for, and I kind of got to the bottom one way or another about every little problem. So that's it. I'm expecting the owner to show up with a brand new battery so I can put their battery in and take mine out, and the car should start on them every single day with no issues at all.